The opinions shared on Teal Time with Hope reflect those of the host and guests. Unless there's an expert in their field joining us, this podcast is for education and support only and does not replace medical or mental health advice. Please always consult a licensed professional for your personal care.
Hey everyone, just before we begin, I just want to give a disclaimer. There were some technical difficulties in getting this recording finally completed. It started with the bad weather a couple of weekends ago where the internet connection just didn't let us record that day. Then the following weekend, we were able to record and it went, in my opinion, beautifully, with the exception at the end when the recording hadn't completely uploaded before my guest checked out on her side from Riverside. And because of that, the recording didn't fully load. And what happened was basically you could just hear me talking and you couldn't hear my guest talking. And that was no bueno. So she was kind enough to give me some of her time the following day and re-recorded the last part of the episode. So due to the fact that we weren't quite sure where it ended, so when we began, it may not sound as smooth as a normal recording that just was free-flowing all the way from beginning to end. So apologies for that. I do not think, in my humble opinion, that it gets in the way of hearing the story of my guest and the things that she felt strongly about with sharing. As always, make sure to rate, review, and follow, and hit that notification button so you know when a new episode is coming out if you have not done so already. And if you like this podcast as much as I hope you do, please make sure to share with others about what we're trying to do with sharing stories as much as possible about ovarian cancer. All right, well, let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teal Time with Hope. I am the host, Hope, and I hope everyone is doing well. I am happy to say that I have a guest. You heard that right. I have a guest for the show today. And this lady kind of met her serendipitously in a way because she spoke at one of the events for the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition together in Teal in September, this past September. And I saw her again at the Runway for Hope by Be the Difference Foundation. And she actually got to meet my big sister. And I got to, I think, hug her there and say hello. But we didn't really get to talk in length until Teal. I saw her at another event, which was by NOCC, but it was at a small, kind of quaint event that I spoke about in a previous episode. It was so cool because I got to talk to her in a bit of length, and I made sure to invite her to come and be a guest on this show. So without further ado, welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. Hope, I really appreciate you having me on. And we got to talk in length, and it was great because I love building those connections within the community. So
yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when y'all hear her story, and if you ever meet her in person, if you have the honor, in my opinion, to meet her in person, she's just legit sweetness and positivity and laughter. Let's just get right into it, Shannon. Dash is in like the dash. Shannon, just want you to feel comfortable and just share as much of your story that you would like to share and what you'd like people to know about you.
All right. So I'm very much an open book, especially when it comes to this aspect of my life. This September, it marks 25 years of survivorship for me. I was first diagnosed with ovarian cancer when I was 23. I was then diagnosed with a different type of ovarian cancer at 33. And then here in 2023, when I was 45, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. So when I say I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, I've been there. So
absolutely. And by the way, I know probably you get told this all the time.
Thank
you. Look good, Mama.
I will actually be 49 this year.
Which she's probably lying, y'all, because she does not look it. But Shannon, like you said, you were 23 when you first got diagnosed.
23. And, again, I'm in my 40s. So 20 years ago, there wasn't this big push of information. The internet was obviously it was a thing, but not like it is now. And there just wasn't that type of information. So I had no idea. They're just like, you have cancer. And first thought to my mind was, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And that was really scary. I was here in Dallas, but all of my family is in Philadelphia. And so I was here. I was technically by myself. It was just me. I had a couple of really close friends and the man that's now my husband. We had just started dating a few months before. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so, thankfully I was able to get connected to a research study through Planned Parenthood, which is where I'd gone for my exam because I didn't have insurance. And at the time, that's really the only options that, young women had if you don't have insurance. So, yeah, they got me connected with a research study, and it was still scary because I didn't know anybody else that had done this. I didn't know what to expect long term.
And you were young, extra
And I was
young.
young, extra young. And, it was crazy. Would turn out a few years later, I would be at just a random 5K up in Addison for the Mary Kay Foundation, which is for domestic abuse. And it just so happened that I ran into one of my now really good friends, Crystal, at an NOCC information table. And I just walked by. I remember seeing the teal in the sea of pink and purples. And I was like, does that say ovarian cancer? And she was like, yeah. And I said, I had ovarian cancer. And they just pushed the information. They were like, even though you're a survivor, you're in recovery, take this information. We still have resources for you. Because again, I didn't have anything after the fact either, And so they just were like handing me information. And I just was a little overwhelmed at first because that's a lot of information, especially when you start to see as a young person the words recurrences, things like that. You're like, wait, I thought this is like a one and done situation.
Again?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I thought this was a one and done. No. So, but I felt prepared now. Now when I went to doctor's appointments, I knew how to explain what had gone on in my body and what was going on in my body. So when it came time for that 10-year mark for me, I was 33. I knew something wasn't right. People that see the flyers, it says ovarian cancer whispers, and they're not wrong. These were just small little blips, but I knew something wasn't right. And I really do attribute all of that information that had suddenly become available to me because I was then able to advocate, and we were able to catch it very early. And so I was able to get, again, the treatment that I needed.
I mean, it was almost like it was meant to be that you were at that event to have met that lady that gave you that information to keep in mind things.
To keep in mind. Yeah. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that. I believe that, our paths are aligned where they need to be. And so even when we don't think that there's someone out in the universe looking out for us, they are, and they put you where you need to be. And we may not see it at the time, but it's there.
I'm really there with you, and I think that's amazing that you got that connection. But if I could go all the way back to when you were 23, I forgot to ask, did you know anything about ovarian cancer before you were diagnosed?
I had no idea. At that time, I knew that the PAP screened for cervical cancer, and that was it. And then you do your monthly breast exams. So that was the only cancer that I had ever heard about, ever knew about, truly heard about. Even my family, they didn't talk about those things. And it wasn't until as I got older that I learned that, I had a great-grandfather that passed from colon cancer. Would have been a good thing to know before, but,
You're like, y'all, family history is so important to talk about. This is a great example of that.
Yes. But yeah, I didn't know anything. I'd never heard of it. Nobody in my family had had anything like that. There was nothing that prepared me for what was about to happen. I was in a research study, so there were some limitations on what I could say and couldn't say, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't if the treatment was causing side effects, I could say something and they would alter it and, try something else. But there wasn't a second opinion. So, like for me, they told me, well, we're not going to do a radical hysterectomy. You're 23, you're young, your CA 125 numbers are beautiful. And at the time, I just thought, okay.
And no surgery, right? No surgery,
No surgery.
no chemo.
No, at the time,
At the beginning,
at the beginning, that first one, my infinite wisdom of 23, I did not want to lose my long, luxurious. I did have hair back then. I had just massive amounts of thick hair, and I didn't want to lose it. And so I chose to go with radiation. And I tell people now when they do the targeted radiation, I said, that's not the way it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was almost like you were getting an MRI.
Everything
Or
has changed
a CT scan. I'm like, your whole body was in there.
Wow.
So it was extremely taxing on the body. But I'm glad I was so young.
But that also is kind of like evidence of how far it has come in 20 years.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Some of we joke and say, I'm an OG, I've been around. There's terminology that they use. They're like, oh, do you have high grade, low grade, carboplatinum resistant? And I'm like, whoa. We were just like, I had epithelial and germ cell ovarian cancer. So I don't know what to tell you.
Like it's probably, in my opinion, I think it existed.
It probably
I was
did,
diagnosed in 2011, like and I don't remember my doctor ever saying high grade. I just remember epithelial, the one I barely can pronounce.
They just didn't tell you those things back then. And you weren't given that kind of knowledge so that you could, even 10 years ago, when I was 33, he said then I had epithelial. There wasn't a high grade, low grade, none of that. It was just, okay, this is what you got. We've got to do another chemo and radiation this time. Let's do this. That time, no, again, because I did have that knowledge. This time I was able to kind of look at what are my options? What are my treatment options? What can I do that's going to work best for my life?
When you got it the second time?
Yes, when I got it the second time.
And you, by this point, right, you've already had your kid?
My son is 2 at this point.
I just think that's awesome that you were able to have a child. When I say awesome, because I know this was amazing to be able to have a child.
They were just kind of shocked. They told me, you're probably going to struggle with fertility for a while. You may or may not be able to conceive, or if you do, you may or may not be able to carry to term. And I did. I struggled a lot with fertility. My husband and I, we had already decided what happens. If we have a child, we do. And if we don't, we don't. Okay. And, now he's 16, a grown, full-on man. But, and thankfully he doesn't remember that time because he was so young. That was a really, really turbulent time for our family because we'd also just learned that he had an autism diagnosis. So he was diagnosed with autism on Monday, and then Tuesday, my doctor called me and said I had cancer, a different type of cancer. She said the cancer returned, but the oncologist said no. The gynec said that your cancer didn't return because it's a different type of cancer. So it doesn't count as a reoccurrence. It accounts as a whole separate entity. So,
and this was when you found out about the colon?
No, that would come later.
So we had the first, just for my memory, if you don't mind. Should have took notes when we were talking before we recorded.
Okay. So
you got the diagnosis was the first one at 23.
23 of epithelial, germ cell. Germ cell at 23.
And then the second
at 33.
Yeah.
And then at 45, colon cancer.
If I also remember our conversation, that it was kind of like of the 3, that ended up being like the worst in a sense of the 3 because there was a lot more.
There was a lot more that happened to me with this one. So I had just finished the BMW 10K. It's weird because this is fairly recent for me, so the memories are fresh. It was December 17th, and then right after Christmas, I started
2023.
Of 2023. December of 2022. I was diagnosed in February of 2023, so it kind of overlapped because it's right there at the end of 2022. But so the 3 days after Christmas, I was just sick. I couldn't get out of bed. I just didn't know what was going on. So finally, I dragged my butt to the emergency room thinking it's like a flu. Like, I've got to have the flu. It's got to be like some crazy flu, something. And so, they're drawing blood, and then immediately they come in. They're like, okay, you're septic. You've got this big old abscess in your colon. And so we're going to have to keep you overnight so we can get some antibiotics in you. So I was like, okay, fine, right, whatever. Surgeon comes in, she tells me, hey, if this doesn't respond to antibiotics, we're going to have to go in and possibly put a tube in to drain it. Again, I'm thinking, okay, fine, whatever. Just give me some antibiotics. We'll go. We'll keep it moving. And at this point, they're throwing around diverticulitis. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. I'll stop eating popcorn. I'm not going to like it, but I'll do it. And so they admitted me. It was a Friday. And my husband had just left, and my sister called me, and I was talking to her, and then all of a sudden I just started shaking uncontrollably, like teeth chattering and just my whole body. And so I just hit the emergency button to call the nurse, and I'm like, something's wrong. And then the time it took for me to do that and the nurse to get in there, I had just lost all control of my bodily functions, so to speak. And she walked in and saw what was going on, and she just reached over, hit a button on the wall. Somewhere, this whole part, I felt like I was floating outside of my body because I can see it, but I don't see it from my perspective. I can see it from like outside. And I somehow make my way to the bathroom because in what little I have at this point, I'm not going to be sitting in my own feces and vomit. So I make my way. I've lost an IV. I've lost all the little leads. They've melted off. And so then this critical care nurse, ICU nurse, just comes strolling in, just as calm as day. And she's like, okay, well, let's get you cleaned up. And she realizes I don't have an IV. And then she comes back in, and hindsight, when I see what it looks like, she had this large bore needle, and she was like, I hate to do this to you, it's gonna hurt, but I gotta get this one in, and we're gonna have one in each arm. Hope, I couldn't feel nothing. I couldn't feel anything.
Wow.
I
You were
couldn't feel
you were
anything.
just almost not there by this
I
point.
was not there. I could talk. I remember it sounding like I was drunk because I was slurring my words. And I remember asking her, what's going to happen if we can't? She goes, well, if we can't get your blood pressure up, we're going to have to intubate you. And I go, oh, no. And I remember saying, oh my God, I'm so hot. And she's like, honey, I know, but I got to get you stable. So they finally get me to where I'm okay. And they immediately take me out of that floor to, it's not quite ICU. I think it was called like PCU, where somebody's monitoring you like all the time. And the next day I feel fine. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what happened last night, but I feel fine today. And they come in and they're just like, you went into septic shock and almost died. I was like, ooh, okay, all right, okay. No bueno.
Not some little
But
thing.
not some little thing. And so I'm there. I spend New Year's in the hospital, as I like to call it, the fishbowl, because it's a full glass window, because you can't have any privacy in there, just in case you decide to get crazy again, they said. And so they let me out on, I think it was January 3rd, send me home with 10 more days of oral antibiotics. I'm thinking, great, all right. I get home, I take all of my antibiotics religiously, and 3 days after I finished my last round of antibiotics, I start shaking again. And I'm like, we ain't doing this again. So I tell my boss. Thankfully, I work from home. My aunt stays with us, and she loaded me up, took me to the emergency room back again. They're like, okay, you're not septic. We can't see the abscess, but you're close, so we're not taking a chance. So admit me overnight, respond again to the antibiotics. They're saying you're doing great. All right, good deal. Next morning, still doing great. Still no sign of this abscess in my colon. Mind you, I've had like 6 CT scans, and all they're seeing is this abscess. That'll come up later.
Nothing else is showing in these CT scans.
Nothing else is showing up in these CT scans. Nothing. So the next day, the attending comes through. She's like, "Well, your numbers look great. We're going to go ahead and discharge you, send you home with some more antibiotics." And I'm thinking, okay, great. Well, the same general surgeon that I had seen the first time that was talking about possibly draining this abscess comes in, and I go, "Okay, well, they're going to kick me loose. They're going to discharge me. I get to go home." And she's just like, "No, you're not going anywhere." And I go, "I'm sorry, what?" And she goes, "Well, you failed. You failed conservative treatment twice." She goes, "We need to get in there and we need to see what's going on." And so I was thinking, "Oh, great. All right." So this was a Wednesday. I do the bowel prep for emergency surgery on Friday, and she's just talking like it's just going to be a quickie laparoscopic. We're going to go in there. It's going to maybe take an hour and a half. Yeah. And obviously I don't know any of this, but next thing I know, my husband's telling me I've been in surgery for 5.5 hours, and I wake up with an ostomy bag.
That's what you
And
woke up to?
yeah. And I was like, what the heck?
That wasn't there before I went in.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't remember that being there when I went under. So what's going on here? And so she comes in, she's talking to me, and she still doesn't tell me what she found. And I truly think that she did this so that I could recover from this surgery because, again, we went from it being just a laparoscopic surgery. She had to cut me. So had to cut me right down the middle. But she told me at this point that my colon had been so diseased that they wound up taking half of my colon and like maybe a third of my rectal stump.
It's a lot.
That is a lot.
It's a lot.
And so I was just like, okay, all right, good deal.
By this point, Shannon, did they say anything to like your husband yet? They were just...
We were just thinking that I had just like severe diverticulitis or something, and something had perforated my colon. Something had perforated my colon, but not
obviously,
what I was
right, but not.
Yeah, but not what I'm thinking had perforated. I think it was some sort of food item that perforated my colon. Or I was even actually waiting for them to tell me my IUD had migrated, because I had read horror stories about that happening to women. And so I go back a couple weeks later to have the staples taken out.
By the way, just real quick, I was curious. I didn't ask. Like for ovarian cancer, right? The late stage, you get the total abdominal hysterectomy, the debulking surgery, and they cut you from like your sternum all the way down. You didn't actually get that with ovarian cancer,
Nope.
But you ended up.
But I ended up having
that same kind of surgery
because of this.
Is
yeah. It is. It's mind blowing. I'm like, I have been trying to avoid this type of surgery. And I'm like, it finally just said, no, we going in there. We going in there. So she's taking the staples out and she's kind of telling me what happened. And then she tells me, and she's like, we did find something in your colon. And again, I'm just like, okay, what'd you find? And she's like, it was a 6-centimeter tumor that had perforated your colon. And again, I'm sitting here kind of going, say what now? And she goes, it is cancer. And I was like, oh, okay. And my sister-in-law was the one that took me because I still couldn't drive at this point. So she automatically goes into research mode. She's got a notebook with her. She's writing everything down for me. And she's just like, okay, and I'm like, okay. And Dr. Madney was like, we've already got you set up with an oncologist, Texas Oncology. All of your records are over there. You've got an appointment on Monday kind of situation. They were like, we're good. So yeah, it was just, it was kind of a whirlwind. I went from, running a 10K, training for a half marathon to finding out I had stage 3B colon cancer. And I was like, okay, all right. And I told my friend Crystal that I met through the NOCC, and immediately she's like, all right, what are we doing? And I said, well, I'm going to have to start chemo. And she goes, well, tell me when you have chemo, I'm going to take you. And I'm all, well, okay. She goes, don't try to tell me I'm not, because I
You
am.
have a tribe, girl.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then once they're there, that's it. You're locked in for life. And so she was just so instrumental with keeping me honest with myself, because again, as women, we try to push through and,
Everybody comes first.
everybody comes first. And she's like, the last time you were worried about your son because he had just gotten his autism diagnosis and you're fighting cancer, she goes, no, you need to focus on you. So I was like, okay, fine. And so she's the one that said, I bet you have Lynch syndrome. And I'm like, what is that? And she goes, it's kind of like the BRCA gene. It's a genetic mutation where you're predisposed to gynecological and bowel cancers. Because I'd already been tested for the BRCA gene back in the day, and they're all like, no, don't have it. But they didn't test for Lynch syndrome back then. I didn't even know what it was.
I didn't hear about it until you told me about it.
Yeah, and I had never heard about it till she told me about it. And now a colon cancer event I was at a couple of years ago, they had a company there that does the DNA testing specifically for Lynch syndrome. And I was just like, I've never heard of this before. And so she was the one that kind of kept me accountable to tell my doctor what's going on. She's like,
got to be our own voice. That's
you
like
got,
a recurring theme,
It is. It really, really is. And I would downplay the symptoms, I'd be like, oh no, it's fine. And she'd get in there with me and she would turn and look at my doctor. She goes, no, she is not fine. She is not fine. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm not fine. I'm starting to hurt a lot. The neuropathy pain is getting bad. And so she's like, all right, well, let me give you some drugs. And I'm like, no, I don't know. Take the drugs. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll take drugs. She's like, do you want some THC? What can I get you to make you feel human? And I was like, okay, you could do that?
I mean,
Yeah.
I tell you, it's great to have a doctor, oh my gosh, Shannon, that's that communicative with you, that's like, hey,
yeah,
I'm here for you.
She was just like, okay, what can I do to help you? And I just absolutely loved my oncologist. She's amazing.
But kudos to your friend too, because like a lot of us, we don't want to always say the severity of it. I've said this to you. I was in the military. We don't like to say it, and others don't like to say it, and we downplay it. And so if you have somebody next to you that can say, oh no.
Yeah, like, no, you need to be real. And she's like, you're not going to get a medal for suffering through it. She's like, but I feel like no, you're not a burden on anyone.
Absolutely.
And you just do what you got to do. And I was like, okay, fine. So I would always send her, because, again, this, the chemo fog is real. The chemo fog is so real. So I would text her things to remind me to tell my doctor. And I would say, and one night I texted her and I said, hey, remind me to tell Dr. Nair when I see her on Thursday that I'm having this tightness in my chest. It's hard to breathe. And she's like, insert expletive. What? And I'm like, yeah, I just have this, it's like something sitting on my chest. And every now and then I just get this pain right in my. She's like, if you don't take yourself to the ER right now, I'm like, nah, I'll be fine. Little did I know she was literally at that moment in McKinney waking her husband up to get dressed so that she could come. She was going to drive to Garland to take me, but I had taken a deep breath and got a really sharp pain. And I was like, maybe I'm not going to wait. Went to the emergency room, told them what was going on. As soon as you say cancer, pain in the chest, chemo port, they had me back in a room, told me I couldn't move, and they're doing the blood clot protocol, as they say, and they're like, yeah, it sounds like you've got blood clots in your lungs, lady.
Like for an embolism?
Yeah, pulmonary embolism is what yeah. So I'm like, first it was my colon, now this. And they're like, well, we do unfortunately see this with the type of chemo that you're on. This happens. I'm like,
but better there than at home ignoring it.
That's true. because had I stayed, yes, we might not be having this
I
conversation.
was about to say,
We might not be having this conversation.
again, kudos to your bestie there.
And she likes to remind me that often, actually. She's like, remember that time I saved your life?
What bestie wouldn't?
I know. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't be here without you.
I'm really glad that you have made it to the other side, Shannon, that you are here to tell the tell. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I like to end the segments with what would be some pearls of wisdom that you would like to tell those who either are newly diagnosed or those that are in the survivorship as being finished with treatment. What are some things that you would advise or recommend from things that you have learned from your journey and the things that you have been around with NOCC and advocacy?
Yeah, of course. And thank you again. I really do. I really appreciate you having me on because I do think it's important to tell our stories. I think the biggest takeaway for others would be, find your community. Community doesn't have to be big. Sometimes it's just a few people, but find those people that have walked that walk. There's a lot of things that are going to happen with your body that your doctors and nurses, they're not going to be able to tell you those things because they've never lived that experience. And so it's important to find others that have done that and that you feel safe talking to about it. So I really think that's important. Also, we have to be mindful in this world we're navigating that, especially ovarian cancer, it's a hidden cancer. You're not going to see it. So you're not alone. Even though you feel invisible, you're not alone. I think the NOCC does a really good job of getting that information out. So please reach out and utilize those services.
Some of our recording was kind of lost in the mix, but some of the things that you hit on were like, I can't talk enough about NOCC, and
Yeah,
there's so
'cause
much truth to that.
they really do put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, with offering services for people going through treatment as well as survivors. And I'm really proud of what they've also done as far as inclusion. We've changed the language in a lot of our information that it's no longer just women that are affected. It's anyone born with a uterus, anyone born with ovaries, because, our trans brothers, they've got a really difficult journey because here's someone that doesn't identify with their female reproductive organs, but it's those reproductive organs that are actively trying to kill them, basically. And so it's harder for them because when they walk into these spaces and they don't look like the other patients. So I think it's important for them to know that they are a part of this community and this community accepts them and welcomes them. Definitely want to make sure that they feel like they're part of this with us.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that didn't really hit me, Shannon, so I'm really appreciative of you even bringing that up because in this advocacy journey I've been on, I can say I haven't really thought of it like that, and I think it's so important. I don't think people don't because it's intentional. I just think that it's easy to just not go, wow, like never really thought about that, but that's so important to mention.
Yeah. And you're right. I don't think it's ever done with any type of malice. I think it's just because sometimes some trans men, they do have radical hysterectomies, but not everybody can. So
Right. Yes. I mean, that takes a lot of money. There are places that may not even be open to
may not
doing
even
that.
do
So
it.
they
Yeah.
have to live a life where they feel they're not understood. And what you hit on was like, NOCC is doing what it can to make sure that we see you.
We see you and we know that every cancer journey is different and every cancer journey is unique. And so those individuals know that, yeah, we see you and we are here with you and we'll be here to help you navigate that journey as best as we can. We can relate, but again, you've got a unique journey too, but we're going to be with you.
Beautiful reminder that, inclusivity is so important. And when you find an organization that is about that,
Yeah.
you're in pretty wonderful organization
Yeah,
because
exactly.
everybody literally that walks through that door or contacts them, they matter. And
Exactly.
whether it's financial, whether it's food,
Exactly.
they
Food,
do amazing work.
insurance. Yeah, they do amazing work. The NOCC is all over the US. So they have offices in it's broken down by regions, so it's all over the country, but they pretty much offer the same services across the board. But each, area is going to have access to different, like local resources as well.
Right.
So
Everywhere there's an opportunity for you to meet in person, not just online, correct?
monthly, they do have for all of the regions monthly, like a Zoom call for like touching base with other survivors. But from there, a lot of us have developed our own in person. For the DFW area, we do have a DFW survivor group. We try to meet up a couple of times a year, about 3 or 4 times, like once a quarter, and we'll alternate between the Dallas side and the Fort Worth side and stuff like that.
It's great. And even though I have not personally experienced it thus far, I think it's an amazing thing that even exists, that survivors out there may not know that it does exist. Because you're inundated with so much, right? When we're going through it, you're like in a shock and you're in a trance and you don't think about
And
any of
you're
that
just in
stuff.
yeah, and you're just in survivor mode. You're
Right.
just trying to get through each day and, may not be the time right then, but
Mhm.
it's nice to have that little piece of information just kind of tucked away in the back pocket, so to speak, so that when you're ready, we're here.
And to touch on that a bit, when we met in
Mhm,
length that last time, the little educational session we were a part
mhm.
of was talking about mental health and how much
Yes.
it can make a difference. Knowing people understand that I'm on the
Yes.
journey they've on or have been on, even if it's not the same, they get it.
They get it.
Whereas we go to our respective homes and jobs and stuff, and we may never meet somebody who's gone through ovarian cancer.
Exactly. You may not, and again, like I said, because ovarian cancer it's an invisible because you're not going to have usually an outward indicator that you've gone through it. You can't feel for it. You don't go through a reconstructive surgery unless you're, as I like to say, part of the port posse. Port posse. Nobody's really going to know. My good friend Crystal, she did not have a port. She had a PIC line for her. So you look at her and you would have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
So
And that's another example of we're all different. We're
all different.
on a journey that's different, but we all are a part of a sisterhood that we
A
never asked to
sisterhood.
be about or be a part of, but we're here
Nope.
and we're not
Yep.
alone.
Cancer, the club that nobody wants to be a part of, but has some really amazing members.
Yeah, absolutely. All VIP, of course, all VIP.
All VIP, all of us.
Y'all, I will be adding any kind of information that I get from Shannon, be it more information on NOCC for those who may not have been here the whole time or new listeners, so you don't have to go back and find that stuff. The stuff about her and her social handles, so you can find her, ask her questions. She's open to that, as well
Yes,
as the things that
very
she
much
does
so.
with the runs for those who are
Yes.
able to partake in that.
Yeah.
I wish I
I'm
could. My
one of those.
knees aren't great, but I can meet people for coffee or breakfast afterwards.
You could come cheer. There you go.
I'll bring my pom-poms. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, which when you get the copy of the book that I will inscribe to you for you, one of the things that I didn't do was I didn't connect with groups, and that was because somebody said it can sometimes be overwhelming for some people.
Mhm.
Some people need that, and some people need to just kind of do their own thing. That being said, it's always nice to know it's there.
Exactly. I've always subscribed to the I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, I
So
like
even
that.
because also the survivorship journey, it's not a fluid process. It's not linear. You'll go possibly, God willing, be in remission, and then after some time, that's when it starts to hit you. So it may not happen 6 months after. It may be 2 or 3 years down the road before it hits you. But
Before you realize, you know what, I
bef-
really would like to connect with others
Mhm.
through have gone through this disease.
Exactly.
And again, like you said, you may never need it, but to
You
know
may
it's
never need it,
there.
but to know it's there sometimes is all you need,
Right.
is just knowing that it's there, and all you have to do is reach out.
And that's kind of what happened with me. I didn't, because I was also teaching abroad, so it was a little different circumstances.
If I run into you in real life and you say, "Oh, I heard you talking." Okay, well, why haven't you come out?
Oh, how funny.
I will give you that friendly little peer pressure to
Oh, that's funny. I mean, whatever it takes to sometimes get people out of their shell, I will say that. But
Mhm.
Shannon, I wanted to also point out that, like, when I was first diagnosed, and plus I had not lived here, I was living overseas and left
Yeah.
Dallas 2 years before. I have a friend in Houston who had a friend. She did say, if you want to connect with her, let me know. And I did. And she gave me some pointers on, like, hey, chew bubblegum when you're going through treatment because there's a metallic taste that you might have.
Oh,
Just little things.
little things like that.
Yeah. It
Watermelon
helped.
Jolly Ranchers
Yeah.
and sour and green apple Jolly Ranchers. Those saved my butt this last time with chemo because, oh my gosh, the metallic taste and then that saline. Yeah, hated it. Jolly Ranchers.
Jolly Ranchers. They may help you. And you wouldn't know if you didn't connect with somebody that's
Yeah.
kind of been there, you know. And that's why it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And that's why that's called a sisterhood.
Exactly. It's a sisterhood. No matter where they are in that journey, we just help everybody else along.
And it helps us. I know when I share,
Hmm.
it helps me knowing, like you believe, even if it's just one person.
Yeah. If I've been able to make an impact on just one person going through it, if I've eased their mind just a little bit, if I've made that process just a little bit smoother, because again, I gave them some advice. But if it's made the difference in one person, then that's worth it to me.
I'm like you. I'm very spiritual, and I feel
Hmm.
like there's a connection with us as humans, and not everything personally happens for a reason, but I think a lot of
Yeah.
things do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That definitely. And I think, when you've battled cancer multiple times and you've come out on the other side, there's a reason for that. You're meant for something.
And part of that is telling your story, is giving back, is helping, and you are.
It gosh, yeah, just to me that is a huge asset because it lets others know, even if they don't say anything, they now know they're not by themselves. They're not alone.
And I'll
Yeah.
piggyback on that and also include something that both of us believe is that it helps with the survivor's guilt, I think.
Yes, big time, big time. Because sometimes you see others and say, "What? Why me? What? Why?" We ask our friends and family, and they'll all say that we need you, we need you. But in our mind, we're like, yeah, but their family needed them too.
They're just as
They're
important.
just as important.
I'm not putting myself down. I'm not saying I'm not loved and worthy of still being here.
Yeah,
While at the same time, I'm like, that
yeah,
hurts my heart when I know
yeah.
women are still passing away. And that's what motivates me at the same time to just keep advocating.
Keep
And
talking because I'm not going to stop until we definitely want to find a cure for cancer, obviously. But I'll also be very happy if we can get some sort of diagnostic testing for it. Because right now, there is nothing that really proactively that you can do, aside from some blood work, which is not 100% accurate, and then a transvaginal ultrasound, and then biopsies. So it's still like,
it's up to
we've
us
got
to listen to our body, and we need
bodies.
more than that.
Exactly. We need more than that. We've got to find a way to where, because, I was lucky. I was very lucky and very blessed because I caught it early enough that I could. But that's not the case with a lot of women. We're seeing with breast cancer numbers
Oh,
that
yeah. They've come
they're
a
getting
long, long,
much
long
more,
way.
much further because people are now really focusing on breast health awareness and checking and mammograms. So being able to catch it early on has been just amazing. Now we just need that for us too.
One day it's going to happen in a world where all cancers are
Yeah.
gone.
Yep.
So that's
True
the hope.
story. That's the hope.
And I want to wish you a very happy May 8th, World Ovarian Cancer
World
Day.
Ovarian Cancer Day. Yes. Yes. I will be rocking my teal and everyone will be sick of me, but that's okay.
I will be rocking my Teal. I'm going to purposely go and do some rideshare driving and making sure I let people see it. Go to the gym.
Yeah, I have a teal shirt that I wear to the gym. Yeah, I'll be all over the place.
Yeah, we need to. And, it's exciting to see the evolution because May 8th, I celebrated for the first time in 2013, I believe, which was the first year. And I was in Saudi when I did that. So it's really cool to see the growth.
Exactly.
So y'all please wear some teal on May 8th.
May 8th.
Which is just coming up. And
it's right around the corner.
It starts a conversation when people ask, why are you wearing it?
Yeah.
I forgot to ask. I guess, what would you say on how you best deal with some of the mental health aspects of going through something like this 3 times? If you don't mind sharing.
No, I don't. I definitely realized that I had to make sure that I focused on my mental health because, again, when you're going through active treatment, you're not thinking about that part. And so I had utilized a lot of the resources that the NOCC offers for finding counselors that deal with cancer survival, and honestly, a lot of times just talking with my circle has helped. And I'll also say there is medication that helps, and I am not afraid to take the medication.
Nor admit to it, and I think
nor
that's
admit
what's
to, yeah, I'm not
important.
ashamed to admit it. I needed medication for some other aspects, but if I hadn't, I think the added mental stress of chemo and cancer and all of that would have just been way too much to handle. I'm glad that I addressed that part of my mental health even before having cancer, because that's just a whole nother layer of being able to process everything. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
That part.
You don't get a medal for getting through this the hard way. We're done with that. We're done with rub some dirt in it, or we're done with just, suck it up and move on.
Right. And never, ever say you're not okay.
And never, ever say, no, don't ever let anybody know you're not. No, let people know you're not okay. Let people know so that they can also check in on you. And they can check in on you and say, hey, how are you doing?
That's something that I have had to learn a lot through my journey as well. And being able to just vocalize, it's okay not to be okay.
It's okay not to be okay.
And you have overcome, things that people can't even imagine.
And then you've also served it. By the way, thank you for your service. You are overseas, and I know that can't be easy. So, that's just added to
and then,
all of
like
this.
You said, there's other things you do get taught in a way to never complain. Don't say you're hurt nor injured, and just literally suck it up. And it has served me well to a degree, while at the same time I had to learn to let that kind of go. I have a friend that said, you're not in the Army anymore. You can say you're not okay. You can say it's a 10 out of 10 and not lie and say it's a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, same. I did the same thing. I'm like, well, she's like, girl, for the first time, you actually posted about not feeling, like, and I'm like, okay, yeah, so about that, I can't feel my toes and it hurts everywhere. And she's like, yeah, and my feet are peeling.
Something ungodly. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, girl, seriously. We can edit that part out.
We can edit that part.
Yeah,
no, but real quick, this is the last one. But the truly last part that I want to say about mental health is that I am one to keep things in. And it would have been hard for me 10 years ago, 15 years ago to say, I was diagnosed with anxiety and mild depression.
Yeah.
Now I'm able to talk to just strangers about it. I'm able to talk to family about it. And I'm able to post a little here and there about it with the understanding that when I talk about it, somebody
Mhm.
on the other end is going to read it and feel, I get
And
that.
they're gonna see that and say, "Maybe I can ask for help."
Right. There's hope. The most optimistic people I've ever met.
Exactly. It's like, "Oh my gosh, look, there's Hope. She's and wait, and Hope is going through that? Wait, I
Yeah.
would have never known." And, and you Hope, you're like me. I'm a little sarcastic about it. I say, "Well, yeah, you wouldn't know because I take medication for that. That's why you can't tell, because I needed medication to help."
And that's actually a conversation starter. If I was ever to need medication to help with some of the depression,
Yeah.
with the anxiety, I am not too proud to say I
Yep.
do need some help, and that's okay, and there's nothing
Yep.
to be ashamed of, and
Nothing
there's
to be
nothing
ashamed
wrong with
of
that.
or nothing wrong with it.
And so, thank you so much of giving me your time and your honesty and
Mhm.
transparency in sharing your story and being open for people reaching out if they need to. That really means a
Yeah,
lot.
of course. Always. I'm always happy to share and talk. And again, Hope will list my all of my socials. Feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. She cannot deny it because it's on record. You heard that here, ladies and gents, and y'all, as I like to say. This has been Till Time with Hope. I am the host, Hope. Be well, stay safe. God bless. Bye for now.